Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormley, joined this Friday morning by Andrew Erickson and Derrick Brown of Fantasy Pros. Fellas, huge news last night. We've been waiting for a long time. This has been in the road, coming for a while. We finally got Taylor Swift's new album, Midnights. DBro, what's your initial review?
That's not what I thought we were going to be talking about.
Of course it's not what we're talking about. Christian McCaffrey was traded last night. We actually did get a good Thursday night football game last night. We're not going to be focusing on that because the big takeaway from last night was the breaking news that Christian McCaffrey was traded for a haul to the San Francisco 49ers. DBro, I'll throw it back to you. What was your initial takeaway from the Christian McCaffrey trade?
Well, I stayed up and I wrote up a reaction article that's live on the site right now about my thoughts about McCaffrey. Didn't stay up for the Taylor Swift drop. Oh, sorry. I'll have to make that up later today. But McCaffrey, my first takeaway is it's a good thing, people. Like, we don't have to sit here and get too deep in the weeds to understand better offense, more red zone opportunities. They're top 5 in red zone rushing rate. I get he's going to have to split opportunities with other people, but can we not say that the efficiency goes up and really, like, he's a top 5 running back still? Like, who do you think's better? Considering, like, offensive situation, his talent alone, and the situation he's being airdropped into, we're overthinking this if we're like, oh, this really, really hurts Christian McCaffrey in fantasy.
Erickson, what did you think when you first saw the news?
Yeah, I kind of echo what DBro was saying, where you don't need to overthink it. Like, yeah, he's probably going to get less touches because there's obviously more playmakers in the 49ers offense. They have other guys they can feed the ball to. But if McCaffrey's touching the ball less, it also means he's probably less likely to get hurt. Like, just less touches, less wear and tear on him, but he's going to be efficient. Like, we've seen a ton of running backs in this offense be efficient that are just Joe Schmo. And McCaffrey is a super talented running back in his own right on a bad team that he's been on his entire career. So I think McCaffrey, it's a win. He's going to score a lot of touchdowns. Like that's really the selling point here is he's going to score a lot of touchdowns, more than he ever did in Carolina. So I think that it's maybe a minimal upgrade at best, but he was an RB1 before. He's an RB1 now, still a top 5 guy, a starter every single week.
Do we think that the larger impact in terms of fewer touches will come on the ground or in the pass game, Erickson?
It's tough to say because we've never really seen Shanahan have someone like a receiving back of McCaffrey's ilk. Like Carlos Hyde had a season where he had a lot of receptions. It was kind of out of necessity because they didn't really have a lot of other guys. So I can't say confidently that he's going to catch 8 passes every single week. Like there are no receivers on the 49ers that ever have that type of volume. And you're also talking about them playing with leads. Like they're a good team. The reason why McCaffrey's always catching passes is because the Panthers are always behind in games. So yes, I really think that the selling point with McCaffrey is touchdowns. Like that's ultimately going to make or break him in fantasy football, whereas his efficiency is going to be really effective. And I don't think his receiving gets totally nuked, but I think that the days of him having a 30% target share, 25%, catching 6-7 balls every single week, I think it's maybe a little aggressive.
And DBro, Erickson is going to get into some of the Carolina offense and how that's going to look moving forward later in the show. So for now, I want to give you a chance to sort of touch on what you think that offense is going to look like. Obviously, Robbie Anderson is gone. Now, much larger impact, Christian McCaffrey's gone. DJ Moore is still there for now. I know a lot of us are hoping he's going to get traded. What does this mean for the running backs, for Moore, for other pass catchers? Terrace Marshall, I know there was some talk of maybe he might get some use now that Robbie Anderson's gone. What do you think this offense is going to look like now in Carolina?
Still a dumpster fire. It's not going to be great. As much as everybody, and if you picked up the Dante Foreman or Chuba Hubbard, congrats, but nobody knows what that running back room is going to look like. We can all say, okay, it's Foreman because they signed him. Well, the head coach that was probably part of that process is not there anymore. The defensive guy took over, so are we that confident? I think that you're picking up both of those guys, letting it sift out. It's a terrible offense. Both of them, even the starter, if he gets all the work, is probably no better than an RB3 moving forward. If they split the work, you're looking at 2 RB4s and you're hating life. So I'm not breaking the bank for Deontay Foreman. If I have him, I'm probably trading him. The other parts or pieces of this offense, regardless of whatever Carolina says, I still think that DJ Moore is going to get traded. If they get a good enough offer, I don't think that Carolina is going to say, no, we don't have a head coach. This place is terrible. We don't really know if anybody wants to come even coach in this city anymore. We won't take any more draft picks to make it look more desirable to hire somebody. No. So, I mean, look, maybe Terrace Marshall is probably the guy that you go run out and pick up. And this is not just me confirming priors, but if DJ Moore does move on, if the offense is then lacking pass catchers, because who are we talking about? Shi Smith, Ian Thomas. Oh, wait, we're not going to go back to that well. He could get just volume and be more useful in fantasy than a lot of the other parts and pieces there.
Man, if they do end up trading DJ Moore, which again, I really hope they do. I'm even wearing a Maryland shirt today, supporting my guy. I really like that. Is that the worst offense like in NFL history? I mean, the way the quarterbacks have played this year with the remaining skill position players, that is horrendous. Let's get into the show. Before we do, I want to make sure everyone can find the three of us online. DBro's Twitter handle is at DBro_FFB. Erickson is at Andrew Erickson _. I can be found at Ryan Warmley. And of course, we can be found everywhere online at Fantasy Pros. I also want to take a quick moment to tell you guys about my Playbook's autopilot tool. Autopilot makes it incredibly easy to manage your lineups across all your leagues. It sends emails on suggested lineup changes. It can auto swap inactive players for you. You can even turn on full autopilot to have your optimal lineup set automatically each week. I know tons of people who use this feature when they're traveling or have family plans on Sunday, or even who just want to make sure they're optimizing their lineup every single week. So follow their lead and automate your lineup management for all your leagues with autopilot over at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. You have to be an MVP or Hall of Fame subscriber to use autopilot. So if you're not currently a subscriber, we've got an amazing offer that gets you premium for 6 months without paying us a dime. You can check out that deal at fantasypros.com/offers. You guys know what the show is by now. Week 7 matchup previews here. So let everybody know the bye week teams this week: the Bills, the Rams, the Vikings, and the Eagles. Thankfully, no stars there that we're missing out on this upcoming slate of games. But we should be able to find some good matchups here for you regardless. Let's actually start with that Panthers game here. Bucks at Panthers. DBro, what's the key matchup here?
I think Chris Godwin is going to go nuclear. You look at him versus the Carolina zone-based defense, I think he's going to crush them. Carolina's run zone on 64 to 68% of their cornerback snaps. Chris Godwin has eaten versus zone. 83% of his target volume is against zone. He's the 7th highest receiving grade per PFF, and he's 3rd in yards per route run against zone. Look, you don't have to worry about their best corners on the outside. J.C. Horn is not going to follow him into the slot. He's going to get Miles Hartfield, one of the safeties, who's allowed a 75% catch rate, 133 passer rating. Chris Godwin is a top 5 wide receiver this week. He could have a shot at wide receiver 1 overall.
Yeah, I was going to say he's 12th in ECR across the whole industry right now at half PPR. You have him 4th, DBro, so that is really aggressive. You're standing by that.
I mean, he got a 30% target share last week. Now Tom Brady has another good avenue to feature him. If J.C. Horn is back, he's going to see a lot of Mike Evans. Why would we not like Chris Godwin? I mean, he ran a full complement of snaps last week. That's the one thing I was worried about with Chris Godwin last week. He was at 51% for his route run rate the week prior. Full-time player. Tom Brady wore the t-shirt. I'm curious if he rolls with a Chris Godwin tank top for week 7. If that's it, lock him in. Chris Godwin, 20 targets. Let's go.
And again, every one of the teams on bye has a star receiver that is not in the rankings. So you are going to see some receivers higher up when there's no Kupp or Jefferson or Diggs or A.J. Brown. Erickson, what are you looking at here in this one? And I know you want to talk about these Carolina running backs.
Yeah, I mean, I was excited to see CMC kind of match up against this Buccaneers really tough run defense, but we won't get to see that. Instead, we get to see Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard duke it out against arguably the worst matchup you could possibly ask for running backs. Bucks first running backs this season, 1st in fewest receiving yards, 2nd in fewest targets, 4th in fewest receptions, 9th in fewest rushing yards, 1st in fewest fantasy points per game. So if you're scooping up one of these guys, you don't have a lot to work with here. The way I kind of see it playing out is, last week they combined for 8 touches. You saw Deontay Foreman play a higher snap share under the new, coaching staff, basically under Steve Wilkes. So that's my lean is I think Foreman probably has a bit of an edge. You look at Tampa Bay's defense, it hasn't been that great in the red zone. So if there is a sliver of chance that the Panthers do get in the red zone, I think that it would be Foreman that would be getting the rock there with the touchdown upside. But on the other hand, I think Hubbard would probably be more involved in the passing game. That's where he's traditionally due during the preseason. He was a little bit more involved in the passing game and even last year, whereas Foreman really is more of a Derrick Henry early down type of grinder running back. So that's the way I see this backfield playing out. Either way, RB3s at best. I think I'd honestly rather play Justice Hill, who's coming back for the Ravens this week against a horrible, horrible Browns run defense. So please don't get carried away with Foreman or Chuba Hubbard. I think they're obviously worth adding to see how things kind of play out, but don't hold your breath with either of these guys.
Yeah, clearly a tough matchup this week. Looking rest of season, which of the two guys would you rather have?
Rest of the season, I think I'd rather have Deontay Foreman. I think that what I saw from him last year, I liked to see what he was able to do with the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, a different situation. And Hubbard, when he got opportunities last year, I don't think that he was as good. I think Foreman's the better running back. So that's probably who I would lean towards.
Is there any chance, just last question, that you would rather have Hubbard in PPR because he will be the pass catching guy, or you would want Foreman in all formats if you had the choice between the two?
He will be the pass catch. Like, I can't say that confidently until we really see it. So this week, I'm going to hedge ranking them. I'm going to put Foreman ahead in half PPR and Chuba Hubbard probably higher in PPR because we really don't know until we see it unfold.
Well, and also, how valuable can it be to catch passes from the quarterbacks they have?
And the thing, too, is
with
Walker threw for -1 air yards last week. So he's going to be looking short toward the line of scrimmage, and that means running back targets, even though the Buccaneers don't give up a lot of running back targets. So, both of them could catch 2 passes for, negative yards. So even in PPR, that's still not super, super valuable.
Let's get into our next game, which is also our first pick in the over-under challenge. The over-under game is sponsored by No House Advantage, who are giving away $10,000 in weekly and season-long prizes, including a grand prize of $3,000. Check them out today at nohouseadvantage.com or download the app on the app stores. Use promo code PROS at sign up for a first deposit match up to $50. Our first over-under challenge of the day is Amari Cooper over or under 12 fantasy points against the Ravens. So be on the lookout for that as the guys share their picks for Cooper and also some of their other favorite over-unders from this week's challenge throughout the show, which listeners can find at fantasypros.com/challenge. But for now, let's turn to Erickson for his key matchup in Browns-Ravens.
I'm looking at Lamar Jackson against this Browns secondary. I know we talked about on the recap show, Ryan, about Lamar and his struggles over the last 3 weeks, basically all without Rashod Bateman. Now, Rashod Bateman has been practicing in limited capacity so far this week. I think that he does make his return, and I think that that's massive. Lamar Jackson even said himself that he's happy to have their number one guy back in practicing. He's excited about it. The team doesn't feature the running backs. We've seen this before when even Kenyon Drake has a blow-up game. He had 10 carries. I really think that if they're going to win this game, it's going to be through Lamar's arm and through his leg. So we saw the Browns defense get shredded by Bailey Zappi last week. And when you look at Lamar Jackson, so this comes from Jordan Vanek DFS, just talking about Lamar versus the blitz. During the beginning of the season, dude was ripping up the blitz. He threw 7 touchdowns, 10.8 yards per attempt, 18% touchdown rate, and that was with Rashod Bateman in the lineup. Without Rashod Bateman in the last 3 weeks, he has 1 touchdown against the blitz, 4.9 yards per attempt, and just a 3% touchdown rate. The Browns blitzed on 50% of their dropbacks last week. If Bateman's out there, Lamar is going to be... There's a reason why he's ECR QB1, because he's going to absolutely shred this defense. And I really think Bateman is the key and the reason why they haven't had as much success through the passing game over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, he is the consensus number 1 quarterback for every Fantasy Pros expert, and he's consensus number 1 in the industry rankings. But I have to ask, they didn't seem overly concerned. John Harbaugh called it rest, actually, but then the official injury report came out, and it was a knee for Mark Andrews, who didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. We don't have Friday reports yet. If Andrews, for some reason, doesn't play, which, again, they don't seem concerned about, but if he doesn't play, how drastically would that change your Lamar Jackson ranking?
Is it just going to mean he's going to run the ball more? That's the thing with Lamar, with these running quarterbacks in general, is when you take out their number 1 pass catcher, you're like, we have to downgrade him. And it's like, well, do we? It just means, okay, we're going to dial up more runs from Lamar. That's reason they're the cheat code, and I still think they'll get it done. Without Bateman and Mark Andrews, okay, maybe now we're talking about definitely moving him down a little bit, but I still can't necessarily move around with Lamar Jackson.
And to your point, that Browns run defense is pretty awful, so more runs can only be a good thing. DBro, talk to me about the tight end on the other side of this one.
Yeah, look, we all know that Ryan's going to be running around his apartment, running laps, just wearing a Lamar Jackson jersey. So I agree with Erickson. I think he's going to have a game. If the Browns are going to keep up on the other side, I think Baltimore's run defense is really good, and their outside corners are playing extremely good. So I'm taking the under for Amari Cooper's 12 fantasy points over at No House Advantage. And I think if Cleveland is going to put points up on the board, it's going to be on the back of David Njoku, because Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters since week 3, both of them are below 60 passer rating allowed. But if you look at how the Ravens have defended tight ends, they have not been good. They're 21st in DVOA. They're allowing the 6th most yak overall in the NFL. They have the fourth highest missed tackles, and this is all in Njoku's wheelhouse. Like, he's gotten almost an 18% target share. He's 2nd in PFF receiving grade. He's 4th in yards per route run and 11th in yak per reception. So I think Njoku, who we've seen kind of dance around having big days, like he's had receptions, he's had a decent amount of receiving yards, hasn't had massive days in the touchdown column or just a ton of volume since his breakout game. I think we see a massive David Njoku game. He is inside my top 5 tight ends for the week.
Lots of aggressive rankings here early in the show from DBro. We'll see if that continues. Let's move to game number 3, Lions at Cowboys. DBro, what's your key matchup?
Amon-Ra St Brown is back, and he is going to play a massive role for Jared Goff. And if you look at how Philadelphia kind of neutralized Dallas's pressure, because they're first in pressure rate in the NFL, it's getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands, and versus zone coverage and with his yak ability, I think Amon-Ra St Brown, who's practicing in full, is going to have a monster day. Against zone coverage, which Dallas runs this at 71 to 74% of their outside corner snaps, overall corner snaps, Amon-Ra St Brown has been money versus zone. 59% of his targets have come against zone coverage. He is 15th in yards per route run, and Jordan Lewis has not been good in the slot. 113 passer rating allowed. Amon-Ra St Brown, again, want to stay on spicy rankings. I think Amon-Ra St Brown is going to come back, and he's going to put another team on the list of saying, you should have drafted me.
Yeah, you've got him all the way down at 8th at wide receiver this week. So another guy that you're very confident in. Erickson, who are you looking at?
I have Amon-Ra St Brown at 5. So
I'm probably going to bump him up.
I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on Amon-Ra St Brown. And I do want to mention, too, before I forgot to, when we're talking about Browns Ravens, Amari Cooper. I'm definitely taking the under on Amari Cooper's prop at 12 fantasy points. Look, Cooper in 2 road starts this season has a total of 4 catches for 26 yards. He has disappeared on the road this year. And with Amari Cooper, we know he's so boomer bust. I just think it's always a smart bet in general with some of these more volatile wide receivers to take the under on them more often than not. And I think Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters are also playing much better than they were to start the season. So I'm going under on Amari Cooper. As to the Lions and Cowboys game, I'm looking at Michael Gallup against the Detroit secondary, because I'm excited. Like, giddy up for Michael Gallup. Like, he is my favorite wide receiver 3 flex play this week. If you have him, picked him up off the waiver wire, like, you got to start him this week. So 33% air yard share and nearly 100 air yards last week while playing a season high 76% of the snaps. He only had 2 passes on 7 targets, but we expect the efficiency to increase with Dak Prescott coming back and starting at quarterback. Gallup has a 23% target share over the last 2 weeks. CeeDee Lamb has been on the injury report dealing with his hip injury, which could be contributing to why his numbers haven't been great. The targets have been there for CeeDee Lamb, but now it's a different quarterback. And Dak traditionally hasn't targeted CeeDee Lamb nearly as much as Cooper Rush has over the last couple of weeks, again, just dating back to last year. So a healthy Michael Gallup against a defense that ranks dead last in DVOA against number 2 wide receivers. Michael Gallup, the last time he played the Lions, 150 receiving yards 2 years ago. This time, he goes 150 but scores 2 touchdowns. Here we go.
You actually don't. You said he's your favorite wide receiver 3 this week. You actually have him as a wide receiver 2. He's 22nd in your current rankings that are on the site. Let's move to Falcons at Bengals. Erickson, what's your key matchup?
I'm looking at quarterback Joe Burrow against this Falcons secondary, and I'm excited about this Bengals passing attack. You know, over the last 2 weeks, the Bengals rank first in early down pass frequency, and they have a 10% pass rate over expectation. So I expect the Bengals to attack the Falcons pass defense that ranks 31st in passing yards allowed per game, over 280 yards per game. They also rank 30th in DVOA versus shotgun formations, which the Bengals basically threw out under center like last week. They're like, no, we're not doing this anymore. Basically, it was a kneel down and a QB sneak that they ran under center. And it was like, okay, we're doing shotgun on every single play. And we saw the efficiency from Joe Mixon increase on the ground as a result as well. And teams are throwing on the Falcons, the 4th highest pass rate allowed in the NFL this season. So we saw Joe Burrow and company kind of click a little bit last week. And I think they finally hit their stride here in the middle of the season and kind of rip apart this Falcons secondary.
Any interest in starting Tyler Boyd or really just focusing on Chase and Higgins?
I think it's really with those 2 guys. We see Hayden Hurst and Tyler Boyd kind of bounce back in terms of whoever is the number 3 guy. And when I look at this particular matchup, I actually prefer Hayden Hurst over Tyler Boyd, assuming that Hurst is healthy. Like there's like a correlation between like when Hurst is on the injury report, like he's limited all week, like he then plays bad, and you see Tyler Boyd have more productive games. And then when Hayden Hurst practices in full, it's like, oh, he does have the boom game. So I think this particular Hurst has been practicing this week. I feel better about Hurst as that number 3 option because when they've both been healthy, it really has been Hurst as the number 3 receiver and not Tyler Boyd.
DBro, please talk me out of putting Kyle Pitts back in my lineups this week.
I can't. I think Kyle Pitts is gonna have a good day. The strength of this Cincinnati secondary, and this is gonna be an attack point. If it's not gonna be Drake London, it's got to be Kyle Pitts. I understand he only got a 21% target share because Atlanta wants to run the ball. The big thing that we should care about is his route run rate. He was up at 82%. So bravo, Arthur Smith. You did something smart. Kudos to you, sir. And I think Kyle Pitts has a really good game here because Cincinnati versus tight ends. They are 4th in receiving yards allowed. They've allowed the 12th highest catch rate and the 5th most receptions allowed. So Kyle Pitts, let's go.
He has not topped 25 receiving yards more than once this season.
He's gonna do it this week.
I certainly hope you're right. I'm invested in him enough that I need him to be good. I just don't have any faith in it. Let's move to game 5. Giants at Jaguars. DBro, key matchup.
Talking about further investments, baby. Been screaming at people to invest in Travis Etienne, and he is going to have himself a game this week. The Giants' run defense has been terrible. You're looking at a run defense that's 28th in rushing yards per game allowed, 29th in EPA, and at 30th in explosive run rate. This is all in Travis Etienne's wheelhouse. If Kenyon Drake, of all people, can look like he found the fountain of youth, Travis Etienne is going to eat them alive. Since week 3, he has been a big play waiting to happen. Dude is averaging 12 touches, 82 yards per game. He's got the 5th highest breakaway run rate over the last 4 games. Etienne season, baby. He's inside my top 20. Let's go.
Yeah, you are the only FantasyPros expert with him in your top 20. You've got him at 18 currently, but I want to ask rest of season because you are on Twitter a lot telling people to go trade for him before this big blow-up game. So what do you see as value rest of season?
I'm a rest of season pulling up my ranks. I've got him at RB20. I think he is going to settle into RB2 range for the rest of the season, probably with a little bit of ceiling for more if we see the target volume bump. If he can take over a little bit more of this backfield, because the route run rate has been climbing up. James Robinson, we're seeing the effectiveness fall off. And this is not just a 1-week trend. This has been going on for 3 to 4 weeks, people. Like, James Robinson has not been breaking long runs. I think he's got 2 runs of over 10 plus yards over the last 3 to 4 games. So we were going to see Travis Etienne assert himself more and more as the season goes on.
Erickson, what are you looking at in this matchup?
Looking at Wan'Dale Robinson against cornerback Darius Williams in the slot for the Jaguars. So we look at Robinson, his first game back from injury, 3 catches, 37 yards, and a touchdown. He only played on 23% of the snaps, but hyper-targeted. 36% of his routes, he earned a target. I expect his snaps to increase as he kind of gets back and more acclimated to the offense. And I think it's a really good matchup, again, against Darius Williams. Horrible slot corner, ranks 4th in targets and 5th allowed in receiving yards, defending the inside this season. So if you picked up Wan'Dale Robinson and you have holes in your roster at wide receiver, I think you can plug him in. Like, maybe he doesn't have a super high ceiling just playing in the Giants offense, but in full PPR, I think he can get the job done.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is his ceiling wide receiver 3, or could it maybe even get even higher as the season goes on?
I think it can definitely get higher as the season goes on. I mean, this dude was a mega producer at the college level. Now, you look at him and you're like, man, what really is this guy ceiling? Like, he's not a very big individual. I'll say that, but he's talented. And at the college level, all the guy did was produce. So you can kind of, mock him for being a little bit smaller in stature, but the kid can ball and play football. So I would be a buyer of Wan'Dale, and I would not surprise me at all if we continue to move him up the rankings as the season progresses, because Kadarius Toney, I don't know if he'll ever play again. So Wan'Dale could be the number 1 receiver on the Giants rest of the season.
I know you guys both liked Kadarius coming into the season, but that dream is dead. Let's move to Colts at Titans. Erickson, what's the key matchup?
No, it's going to come back. Don't worry. It's more of a nightmare, honestly, at this point than a dream. So
he needs a hamstring transplant.
I'm looking at Matt Ryan against this Titans pass defense, which really isn't a defense because they don't really play defense against the pass. So I think Matt Ryan's a really strong streamer in terms of fantasy football. If you're looking for a plug-in for a Jalen Hurts, for a Matthew Stafford, or whoever you were playing, Kirk Cousins, I think Matt Ryan can fill in. The Titans are allowing a league-high 6.6 touchdown rate. They're ranked bottom 10 in pressure rate, and we've already seen this matchup play out. Matt Ryan already faced the Titans this year, and he threw for 356 passing yards and 2 touchdowns back in week 4. And we're starting to see more of these receivers gel. Paris Campbell finally did something with his cardio routes last week. He actually commanded targets and actually caught targets for yardage and caught a touchdown. Alec Pierce, super productive against Indy the first time they played, 4 of 6 targets for 80 yards. I think Pierce is worthy of a flex spot. He's averaging 68 receiving yards and a 24% target rate per route run over the last 4 weeks. Titans have allowed the second most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. So with Pierce, Campbell, Michael Pittman all kind of firing, I think that Matt Ryan could have a big game here. And don't forget, Mo Alley Cox had the big game against the Titans back in week 4 as well. So with those weapons at his disposal, a defensive line that doesn't really generate a lot of pressure, I think Matt Ryan can be in for another solid day.
DBro, what are you looking at from the Titans side of things?
I agree with Erickson on Ryan. That's why I'm taking the over on his 16 fantasy points for the no house advantage over under challenge. But if the Titans are going to try to keep up with Matt Ryan just shredding them through the air, I think it's going to be on the back of Derrick Henry. And I know that's not a hot take for anybody. I guess I'm going to take the Friedman low-hanging fruit here, since we haven't talked about Derrick Henry in this game yet. Since week 4, Colts have turned into, they used to be a pass funnel. They are not now. They are an extreme run funnel since week 4. They're allowing the 3rd highest rush success rate, 5th highest rushing yards per game, and oh, look at that, the 4th highest yards per carry allowed. So as much as Derrick Henry he's still the big dog, just not the big dog of old. He's still top 20 in yards after contact per attempt. We can lock him in for 20 to 25 touches on the ground. I think he goes over 100, maybe gets in the box twice for touchdowns. So still an RB1, and I think he has a really good day here.
DBro, I know we've sort of allowed Friedman to make it his brand to pick the low-hanging fruit. I expect better of you, man. Come on, let's get these names a little more unique going forward. Packers at Commanders, last game on the early afternoon slate. I give the NFL so much crap for just front-loading all these games every week. They finally didn't this week. We have 4 late afternoon games, so I'll give them credit for that. Packers Commanders is the last one in the early slate. DBro, what's the key matchup?
I'm going to go really deep. I'm going to go find a name out of the woodwork. Oh, no, never mind. I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers. Him versus this Washington pass rush, I think, is going to be really interesting. I think the Commanders have an avenue to possibly win this game if their pass rush can get home. They're 3rd in pressure rate this year. They're 6th in blitz rate. And Rodgers has quietly been blitzed, or at least under pressure, a ton. He's the 9th highest pressure rate faced this year. And you look at him versus the blitz. He's been very uneven. 10th in PFF passing grade, 6th in big time throw rate. So, okay, the plays are there and he's pretty good, until you also look at the fact that he's 18th in yards per attempt and 18th in adjusted completion rate. So what does this mean? Green Bay could be really more volatile, and maybe they disappoint here versus Washington. And if Washington's pass rush can get home and rattle Aaron Rodgers, and they have foreshadowing success on the ground, I think the Commanders maybe pull out a win here.
I think they can definitely pull out a win. They just got a huge quarterback upgrade this week, going to Taylor Heineke. Erickson, who are you looking at?
I'm looking at the Washington Commanders run game with Brian Robinson against his Green Bay Packers run defense that are frankly just not that good. Looking at Green Bay, they've allowed 53% of their opponents' touchdowns on the ground this season, the 6th most rushing yards per game at 135. And they're not even playing like these super elite run offenses. I don't understand really what is going on with this Packers defense. And I think that the Washington Commanders have shown us that they trust Brian Robinson the last time we saw him play, 17 rushes for 60 yards and 1 rushing touchdown. I think they want to feed Brian Robinson. I don't think they want Taylor Heineke to drop him back to throw against a very strong secondary that the Green Bay Packers have, because when he drops back to throw deep, oh my God, it is atrocious. It is so horrible watching that man throw the deep ball. So I think this is a perfect opportunity to ride their running backs, not even just Brian Robinson, using Antonio Gibson, using McKissick. They have a talented backfield. Leverage it in a matchup that they can expose. So I'm taking the over on Brian Robinson's 9 fantasy points as part of No House Advantage. Going over on the running back. Just hoping he doesn't get game scripted out.
So Robinson is a low-end RB2 in our rankings for this week. He's all the way down at RB34 in our rest of season rankings. That seems weirdly low to me. Is that about the right range for him, or should he be higher, Erickson?
I think it's just the ambiguity about Taylor Heineke and how long Carson Wentz is going to be out, and just kind of like Washington in general. It's not an offense that you're really excited about. And Brian Robinson is a running back that if they do fall behind in games and their defense is not great, then he's not going to have any value. Like, so that's the concern with Robinson, where he'll have games where if they're playing with the lead, okay, great. Like, he's going to be effective. But if they get blown out in games, their defense is not stopping anybody, then you have major concerns where he's not involved at all, and you're seeing a very, very low floor.
Let's move to the late afternoon slate. Texans at Raiders. Erickson, what's the key matchup here?
Oh, baby. Josh Jacobs against this Texans run defense. Josh Jacobs, in my rankings, he is RB2. RB2 this week. Josh freaking Jacobs. So I'm taking the over on 16 fantasy points as part of No House Advantage over under challenge, because Josh Jacobs is a friggin' bell cow. 81% snap share, 84% opportunity share in week 5 before the bye week, 21 carries, 154 rushing yards, and a touchdown. And he's catching balls out of the backfield. 5 catches on 5 targets, 39 yards. Look, people talk about, McDaniels, he's going to always use a committee running back approach. It's like, that's not true. When you look at some of the running backs he used in New England when he ran them to the ground, Dion Lewis, LeGarrette Blount, Shane Vereen, they were all in contract years. And they all were bell cows. And that's what he's doing with Josh Jacobs. So forget your priors about, they're going to use a committee, they're going to use Bold and Zamir White. Like, that's not happening. And I don't think it's going to happen here against this Texans run defense that have been horrible against the run all year. 4th highest scoring rate allowed on the ground. 3rd most rushing yards per game. I think Josh Jacobs absolutely feasts here. That's why I have him ranked number 2 overall.
Yeah, DBro, before we move to your matchup, I just want to ask, because Erickson has him 2nd, Fitz has him 6th, Friedman has him 4th, Joe has him 6th, ECR consensus is 5th. You've got him all the way down at 11th. Why is that?
Well, I've adjusted my ranks this morning with the McCaffrey news, moving some guys around and stuff like that. I have him bumped up to... let me see where Jacobs is. He's going to fall somewhere in like the 5 to 7 range for me right now. I've got him at RB7. And it's only because I've got Austin Ekeler, Henry, I got Barkley and Fournette and Breece Hall all above him. And only because I think that the Raiders can also have success versus their secondary. Now, maybe that again changes if Hunter Renfrow doesn't play and stuff. Maybe I'm bumping Jacobs up just as a tad more into the top 5.
And who's your matchup in this one?
Look, Erickson talked about him on the Start Sit show. I'm going to bring him up here. Nico Collins, baby, versus the Raiders secondary. Nico Collins, look, he's only gotten a 16% target share. He is getting the deep looks in this offense. 23rd in air yard share. He is 15th in ADOT. Going against the Raiders secondary, which they're 25th in passing yards allowed. They've allowed the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. So Davis Mills has a day. I think it's going to be because Nico Collins also has a day. So looking at him, he's also been really efficient lately. He's 22nd in yards per route run. So Nico Collins, if you're looking for, a wide receiver 4 that could give you some real upside this week, look to Nico Collins.
Next up is Jets at Broncos. DBro, back to you for your key matchup in this one.
I mean, I talked about him. He's comfortably, I've got him at RB6 right now. Breece Hall is a locked-in RB1 weekly going against this Denver run defense, and the Jets are telling us what they want to do. They don't want to throw the ball with Zach Wilson. They want to feed Breece Hall. Since week 4, dude is averaging 20 touches a game, 132 total yards. He is top 5 in juke rate, breakaway run rate, and yards created per touch, and now he gets a Denver Broncos run defense that's 14th in EPA. They're 21st or lower in every single adjusted line yard metric that I care about. So, again, lock in Breece Hall for 20 touches, probably 100 to 120 total yards, and an RB1 for the week.
Erickson, what are you looking at here?
Looking at the Broncos wide receivers against a really underrated Jets secondary. I'm concerned about Denver's offense here. We've obviously seen Russell Wilson play the last couple of weeks, and the fact that he's dealing with an injury, it's a mess at the quarterback position. We may even see Brett Rippon actually start in this game for the Denver Broncos based on whatever Russell Wilson. Even though the last time Brett Rippon actually played was on a Thursday night against these Jets, and he actually didn't actually play that bad. But in this particular matchup, I'm worried about these Jets perimeter cornerbacks for the receivers, specifically Courtland Sutton. Looking at the Jets, they're just one of 2 teams that have 2 cornerbacks that rank inside the top 10 in fewest fantasy points allowed per coverage snap this season. Right cornerback DJ Reed, left cornerback Sauce Gardner, also a rookie. They've been helping the Jets pass defense significantly. their defense ranks 7th in fewest receiving yards allowed per game to opposing wide receivers. So the Jets, you got to start taking this defense seriously. Like, they're not a defense where, you just plug and play everyone, they suck. No, that's definitely not the case. They've really reformed, taken on Robert Saleh's mentality as a defensive-minded head coach, and they're playing really well. So I'm not excited about any Broncos receiver really this week.
Seahawks at Chargers. Next game on the slate. Erickson, what's the key matchup here?
KW3. I hope that becomes his new abbreviation. Ken Walker against this Los Angeles run defense, because they don't play run defense. The Chargers, like, we see this every year with this defense. They don't try to generate any type of pressure up front. They're allowing a league high yards before contact, 1.86. They're allowing a league high yards per carry at 5.8. And Walker was an absolute bell cow in his first start last week without Rashad Penny. 21 carries for 97 yards and a rushing touchdown. 2 of 3 targets for 13 yards. 92% opportunity share. He ran more routes than DJ Dallas. So the big concern with Walker is, like, okay, what happens if they fall behind? Well, everything that we're looking at, it says that, okay, Dallas, yeah, maybe they sprinkle him a little bit more in pass pro, but we're still going to see Kenneth Walker. Like, they're designing plays where he's either split out wide, there are these pitch passes. He's going to still be involved even if Seattle falls behind. So I think that you can feel really confident about Kenneth Walker regardless of the game script. And that's kind of what the archetype of an RB1 is. No matter what happens in the game, they get the rock. I think Walker's going to get the rock here.
Yeah, this is a guy that you and I talked about, Erickson, on the Sunday recap show last week as well, because he had a really good week. In week 6, he's currently RB15 rest of the season. That also maybe feels a little low. To me, not crazy low, but I don't see any reason why he couldn't be an RB1 with the workload he's getting and just how good he looks.
Yeah, no, that does seem really low. I mean, maybe just after 1 week, people may be hesitant to just like be too aggressive, but this is where we see the major spikes in players. I think you want to be over aggressive and bullish on some of these rookies, especially because we know Ken Walker's good. Like, he was a highly touted prospect. Me and DBro debated back and forth between Ken Walker and Breece Hall all offseason. What do you know? They're both good. So we were both right. And the fact that he is seeing more work in the passing game is really encouraging for him rest of season.
DBro, you continue the trend of these low-hanging fruit guys picking the RB2 in ECR for week 7.
Well, I'm coming in above consensus. He's my RB1. And yes, I mean, come on. We have to talk about Austin Ekeler. And just for a second here, Kenneth Walker is my RB10 in rest of season rankings. Him and Breece are both nestled inside the top 10. You'll love to see it. But with Austin Ekeler, I mean, the guy is just going to eviscerate. This Seahawks defense can apparently only stop people named Eno Benjamin. Who would have thought that? Austin Ekeler is going to crush them because Seattle can't they've been giving up everything to running backs. They're 6th in fantasy points per game allowed. They're 31st in rushing yards per game, 27th in EPA. Austin Ekeler has been amazing. 21 touches per game, 130 total yards per game over his last 3. The red zone touches are there. He is going to have a day.
Let's move to the last game in the late afternoon slate. Chiefs at 49ers. Obviously, the 49ers going to have a bit of a new look offense here with McCaffrey, as we talked about at the top of the show. But Erickson, what's your key matchup here?
Yeah, and I'm good looking at Jimmy Garoppolo against this Chiefs pass defense. I do want to also highlight that with McCaffrey, we've gotten some more updates where, last night they talked about, okay, they're going to use him in red zone packaging and high leverage situations. And now Kyle Shanahan's also saying that he doesn't know if he's going to play. So you got to, stay up to date with with what's happening with McCaffrey, because it matters. Like, if he's active, he's not active, it really affects Jeff Wilson, because it's the red zone that's really a key factor. And even if McCaffrey is only playing in the red zone, DBro hit it at the top of the show, where this team wants to run the football in the red zone. Like, that's exactly what they're really looking for here in terms of, 3rd in run rate, 2nd in expected run rate, and 29th in pass rate over expectation in the red zone. So if McCaffrey is out there, I think that he's going to get high leverage looks, which obviously you want in your fantasy lineup. And it's obviously good for Jimmy Garoppolo. If he's I think that he's one of the key streamers this week, because you look at this Chiefs pass defense and their biggest weakness is they just love to give up receptions and completions underneath. And that's exactly what Jimmy Garoppolo's bread and butter is. The Chiefs have allowed the most yards after the catch of any team in the NFL, and I would argue that no team has better yards after the catch generators than the 49ers offense from Kittle, Ayuk, Debo, and now you're adding Christian McCaffrey to the fold. Part of the reason why the Chiefs have been so bad after the catch is because they rank dead last in terms of yards, receptions, and targets to running backs in the passing game. So it's really like a perfect storm potentially for McCaffrey if he ends up suiting up in this game, even if he is on a pitch count of some sort, that I still think he can be effective and be in your lineups. And I think it just makes Jimmy Garoppolo even that strong of a starter. Same thing for Deebo Samuel, who ranks 4th in the NFL in yards after the catch. So Jimmy Garoppolo could be a very just easy day for him, especially if the Chiefs get up on them, forcing them to throw. Last week, the 49ers fell behind. They had to pass on 60% of their plays, 6 percentage points over expectation. So that's what you're hoping for here. You hope the Chiefs get up on a banged up 49ers defense and that Jimmy G has to, use his playmakers and put up fantasy points.
Yeah, and you've said a couple of times if McCaffrey plays, and I think it's a good question to bring up. Where are we ranking? Because this is obviously going to be the one week where maybe it is a little uncertain where you would want to rank him. In future weeks, he'll clearly be a top 5 guy still going forward. So, Erickson, I'll ask you first, just very quickly, what actually would you put him as his rank if he's playing?
I think that if he's playing, if I can get anything that's tricky, of course, they're playing at 425. So you're put in a precarious situation where it's him versus someone else. Would you start him if you have him and Jeff Wilson? I mean, if McCaffrey's active, I'd probably rather play McCaffrey than Jeff Wilson because of the fear of if they fall behind, like what's Jeff Wilson's role going to be in this game? Is Jeff Wilson getting the red zone touches or they're going to give it to McCaffrey in the red zone? Like we've already kind of alluded to with some of these reports here. So right now I have him RB7. That's probably a little bit too aggressive. Probably going to have to move him down a little bit. I think he's going to still probably end up being in my top 15 because I really don't think you should bench him. Like, especially with all the bye weeks going on. I don't know if you have the luxury to just bench McCaffrey outright. I don't think his snaps are going to be great in this game, but it would not surprise me at all if he does catch some passes, scores a touchdown in a game that we should see some fireworks. So he's definitely going to be in starting territory and probably in the low-end RB1, high-end RB2 conversation when the dust settles, unless we get more information about, what potentially his role will be in offense.
DBro, what do you think?
Yeah, that's where I've got him. I just updated my rankings. I'm bouncing him between RB12 and RB13. It's like him and Aaron Jones are right next to each other because, look, we think like, okay, what's the 2 biggest avenues for him? Passing game and red zone. If he falls in the end zone twice, which it's not inconceivable, they're going to talk about they use him in the red zone plays. Tell me the team that's top 5 in red zone rushing rate isn't going to feature him after trading, a good bit for him. So he gets 2 touchdowns. I can't put him outside the top 13, 14 running backs. Even if he only plays 30% of the snaps, you could still probably lock him in for red zone work and 10 to 12 touches. If they get behind in this game, is it that hard? Because we know he's not going to know pass protection assignments, things like that. Okay, well, what are they going to ask him to do? Okay, run out into the flat, CMC, catch the ball, and do what you do. Go ahead. We don't have to tell you how to do that. Just do it. So, yeah, top 15 running back. I'm with Erickson on this one.
And what's your matchup in this one to look for, DBro?
For me, this San Francisco secondary is banged up. Emmanuel Mosley is out for the season. Charvarius Ward maybe misses this game. He is also banged up. With this zone-heavy defense for the 49ers, I think that Patrick Mahomes can have a good day. And I think that if we're looking at overall season rankings, this defense is going to look a lot tougher on paper than probably the team that actually takes the field this week. You're looking at their cornerbacks probably that are starting, the top 3 guys. Lenore, 102 passer rating. Samuel Womack, 109. Dante Johnson, 104 for his career. It's not good, Bob. It's not good at all. So Patrick Mahomes, I think, can still have a really good day if people are going to fade him based off of, it's the 49ers. We've seen this secondary struggle. Like, would we not remember what happened last year? Like, I get it, they were rolling out, the ghost of old cornerbacks past, but these are not good guys either. So Kansas City Chiefs going to bump up their wide receivers and rankings a little bit this week.
Sunday Night Football, Steelers at Dolphins. DBro, key matchup here?
I think everybody's going to get fixated on the fact of, yes, Miami's corners have not been good. I'm not telling you that they are, but I think if we're looking at how the Steelers are going to move the ball, it's not Najee Harris. I think it's going to be a lot of Pat Freiermuth. He has gotten a massive amount of targets in this offense. We've seen him, he's top 10 in tight end scoring. I'm going to be aggressively ranking him this week because of the target share that he's earned in this offense and the red zone work. And you're looking at a Miami Dolphins defense that's 25th in DVOA versus the position, the 13th in receiving yards, and their first in catch rate allowed. So Pat Freiermuth could easily fall inside the top 3 to 5 tight ends for the week, and nobody should be surprised by that at all, regardless of whoever the quarterback is.
Erickson, what are you looking at here?
I'm looking at Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle against this Steelers secondary because it's pitch and catch, folks. Like, that's exactly what's going to happen here. Steelers are allowing the most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, second highest yards per reception, fourth worst in terms of pressure generated, and that's really been the recipe for success for the Dolphins passing game. Is they're just, when they're not under pressure, they just shred. Like, that's exactly what they're doing. Tua ranks fourth in yards per attempt and second in passer rating overall from a clean pocket. Teddy Bridgewater, in his limited sample size, 10.1 yards per attempt from a clean pocket this season, which ranks number 1 in the NFL. I mean, Tyreek Hill is first in receiving yards, second in receptions and targets per game. Waddle is also top 5 in receiving yards per game. Like, they have 2 guys that rank in the top 5 in receiving yards per game. They even had their starting quarterback. So the fact that they've been so productive, regardless of who they played, and now they have like such a great matchup against a banged up Steelers secondary that really hasn't shown anything to stop offenses, I think it's a great spot for Tua. I feel confident sliding him back into my lineup. And also just that reference point to Kenny Pickett. Looks like he's going to start on the other side, which I like a little bit more for more back and forth because Miami's secondary is actually really banged up. So I think we get a little more back and forth action. Maybe we get some fireworks here on Sunday Night Football.
That would be nice to see. I don't know that I feel too confident about that happening.
Hey, come on. Keep the
Last
faith.
game,
Kenny Pickett, baby.
Last game on the slate is Bears at Patriots. Now, Erickson, you're giving us our first key matchup here. I know you like to go for an over-under of 3 touchdowns for one of these players in the last game on the slate. Who are you picking in Bears Patriots?
God, my heart says Rhamondre, but the math is going to be like, nope, it's going to be Damon Harris because he's the one that actually gets the red zone touches. So that's kind of the big thing here. I'm looking at the Patriots running game against this Bears run defense, or lack thereof, because they don't really have a run defense. League leading 70% of the Bears touchdowns allowed have been on the ground through rushing touchdowns. So I think that Rhamondre Stevenson and Damien Harris are both in play. They can both be extremely productive against the Bears defense that really has not shown that it can stop the run. And I mean, are the Bears going to be able to move the ball on offense against the Patriots defense? Like, I am very concerned about that. So if they can play ball control, I think that there's enough for Stevenson and Damien Harris to both feast in this matchup. I know people are downgrading Stevenson significantly because Damien Harris is probably going to be active in this game, practicing in full this week. But keep in mind, the last time these 2 guys played, each of them saw 18 plus touches. So I think that there's more than enough for Rhamondre to still be the 1A in this backfield while they start to ease Harris back in. Remember, it's a hamstring injury, so these things can get re-injured very easily. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be full go for Harris. I still think Rhamondre is a very strong start. Moved him down a little bit, but I still think that he's very set up to smash still, and I think Harris is an interesting RB3 play.
DBro, we saved the best for last. Talk to me about the Bears offense.
Oh, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good at all. New England pass rush has been good this year. They're 10th in pressure rate, 8th in blitz rate, and this is not going to be good for Justin Fields. We know he's been pressured a ton. He's facing the second highest pressure rate in the NFL. He's taken the most sacks in the NFL. He is 24th in PFF passing grade against pressure, 10th highest turnover-worthy play rate. Oh, my Lord. That hurts me to say all that because I still love Justin Fields, but it's true. So I think if the Bears want any kind of chance in this game, it's going to be run the ball. Oh, run the ball with Justin Fields, and that's about it. Because anytime he drops back to pass, he's going to be under serious duress.
Let's open up the mailbag here to end the show. It's a good time to remind the listeners that if they want even more access to our analysts, be sure to join us on Discord at fantasypros.com/chat. A premium subscription will get listeners full access to our analysts, including Erickson and DBro, through AMAs, stages, and a whole lot more. Our question today: what role do you all think Kyren Williams will play entering the Rams offense, and when do you think that will happen, DBro?
I think that you're looking at his possible upside. It's really going to be in the passing game. I think that he most likely, I don't think Darrell Henderson just goes away or we see Kyren Williams become like a bell cow or anything of that nature. I think Sean McVay has talked about how high he is on him. Look, Kyren Williams, for everybody's wants and needs and love and all that kind of stuff, is still small and he's still slow. Those things are not changing. So I think you're looking at, he's probably going to take over the role that Darrell Henderson played before taking over the bell cow role. And really, that's in the passing game, that's in hurry up, things like that. But he's still going to have to prove that he can hold him in pass protection to get that role. So If people are out there saying, okay, he needs to be picked up and all that kind of stuff, that's great, but he's nothing more than like a middling stash for me, nothing more.
Erickson, in the preseason, there was talk from Rams camp that Kyren Williams was going to have a pretty big role. This is even before Cam Akers looked really bad again. When do you think he's going to be back in this Rams offense, and what sort of role do you think he'll have?
I mean, I think that I'm pretty sure that he's eligible to come off of the IR right after the Rams bye week. So I would expect him to have a role from the get-go if they're as high on him as they claim to be. Now, Sean McVay says a lot of different things about certain players that don't always come to fruition. So consider me a bit bearish on, Kyren Williams coming out and having 9 targets in his first game. I think it just makes the backfield just more complicated. Like the fact that they're using Malcolm Brown like more than, the fact that he's like back on the roster after basically being like, discarded by every NFL team. The fact that they got this Ronnie Rivers kid involved who I'd never even heard of. And I saw him on the field like, oh my God, like there's a guy named Ronnie Rivers in the NFL. Like that's great. So I think he's just going to mix in. And really, I think the play is not just, okay, yeah, stash Kyren Williams, see how things kind of play out. He's not going to save your team. Like this isn't like, oh, league winner Kyren Williams. No, I really don't think that's the case here. I mean, this Rams offense is struggling. And I don't think like, okay, we're going to put this day 3 rookie running back in game and now he's going to save our offense. Not going to be the case. If anything, it's a signal to, if you have Darrell Henderson, you need to trade him ASAP Rocky. Like, get rid of him right now for anyone that thinks that he's going to be the RB1 for the rest of the season. That's not going to be the case. The fact that they're so high on Kyren Williams is just another reason. They just don't ever want to feature Darrell Henderson. Like, as much as they hate Cam Akers, they hate Darrell Henderson too. Like, they don't ever want to feature him. They're always trying to replace him. They're always trying to add other running backs. And the fact that they're high on Kyren Williams just kind of shows through that they are not high on Darrell Henderson. They don't want him to be their bell cow. He's just kind of there by default because they don't have anybody else. And they're going to go to anyone else that they think can actually provide some spark or juice to the offense. So I think the underlying move is, yes, stash Kyren Williams, but also sell high on Darrell Henderson.
Just to make a note of this before we wrap up, because we mentioned it earlier, Mark Andrews did return to practice today on Friday. J.K. Dobbins missed his 3rd straight practice, so Kenyon Drake, maybe Gus Edwards returns, probably a good stash there.
Straight from our in-show Baltimore beat writer, baby. Love it.
Yeah. Let's wrap it up there, fellas. Thank you both for another awesome episode. Everybody listening, please remember to check out Autopilot on Fantasy Pros this season to make sure you're putting forth your best possible lineup, no matter how busy your weekend gets. Most of all, thank you, the fans, for listening. For Erickson and DBro, I'm Ryan Wormley. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.